Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Emma's Stories, your little haven for tales of love, mystery, and hearts finding their way home. I'm so thrilled you're here today because we're about to dive into something truly special. Picture this. A woman wakes up in a hospital bed, her mind a blank slate, only to be told by a handsome stranger that she's his fiancée. But here's the catch. One night changes everything when a dream unlocks a secret neither of them saw coming. This is The Stranger's Vow, a story of lost memories, hidden truths, and a love that blooms where it's least expected. Before we start, a quick shout out to all of you who've been leaving such sweet comments. You're my biggest inspiration. Tell me where you're watching from today. Chicago, maybe, or somewhere far across the world. Wherever you are, I'm so glad we're sharing this moment. Now, let's meet Grace, a woman whose life is about to change forever, all because of one stranger's vow. Let's step into the heart of our story now and meet Grace Miller, a woman whose life feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. Grace is 27 years old, and when we first see her, she's curled up on a stiff hospital chair, staring out at the rain streaking down the window of a Chicago medical center. Her chestnut hair falls in soft waves, framing a face that's gentle yet strong, with hazel eyes that seem to carry a quiet sorrow she can't explain. She's not loud or bold, but there's a resilience in her, a strength that shines even when she feels lost. Before everything changed, Grace was a freelance writer, the kind who'd spend hours in coffee shops, scribbling stories about love and adventure. She lived in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city, surrounded by books and plants she'd name after her favorite characters. She loved the way Lake Michigan sparkled on clear days, and she'd often walk its shores, dreaming up tales of people finding their way. But that life feels like a distant echo now. 3 days ago, a car accident stole her memories, leaving her with nothing but a hospital gown and a name she's not even sure is hers. Grace doesn't remember her parents, her friends, or the stories she used to write. All she has is a strange ache in her chest, like she's missing something vital, something she can't name. The nurses say she was alone when they found her, crumpled on a quiet street, her car totaled nearby. No wallet, no phone, just a silver bracelet on her wrist engraved with the word hope. It's the only clue to who she might be, and she clings to it like a lifeline, tracing its letters when the silence gets too heavy. But Grace isn't the type to crumble. Even now, with her world erased, she's got this quiet fire inside her. She asks the doctors questions, her voice soft but steady. How did this happen? Will I remember? She doesn't cry, not because she's numb, but because she's saving her strength for whatever comes next. There's a gentleness to her, yes, but also a stubborn streak. A refusal to let this blankness define her. She's the kind of woman who'd rather fight for answers than wait for them to fall into her lap. And then there's Chicago, sprawling and alive outside her window. The city's a mix of towering skyscrapers and hidden corners, a place where secrets linger in the shadows. Grace doesn't know it yet, but this city holds the key to her past, and it's about to send someone her way who'll change everything. She's not alone in her loss, though she feels it. Somewhere in her fractured mind, there's a whisper of warmth, a memory she can't reach, a lake, a fire, a hand pulling her to safety. It's fleeting, but it's there, tugging at her heart like a thread she's desperate to unravel. Grace's life before the accident wasn't perfect. She was a loner by choice, more at home with her notebooks than with people. She'd lost her mom young, or so she thinks, the details fuzzy like a half-forgotten dream. Her dad was a shadow, always working, leaving her to grow up fast. Writing was her escape, her way of making sense of a world that often felt cold. Now, with even that gone, she's adrift, but there's something about her that draws you in. Maybe it's the way she tilts her head when she's thinking, or how she smiles faintly at the rain, like she's daring it to wash her fears away. As she sits there, tracing that bracelet, Grace doesn't know what's coming. She doesn't know that in just a few hours, a man will walk through that door and claim her as his. She doesn't know that her story, the one she can't remember, is about to collide with his in a way that'll rewrite them both. All she knows is the rain, the quiet, and the strange pull in her chest telling her to hold on. Because Grace Miller might be lost, but she's not gone. And soon she'll find out that love has a way of finding you, even when you don't know who you are. So here she is, our Grace, a woman on the edge of something big. A stranger's about to step into her world, and with him comes a mystery that'll test her heart in ways she never imagined. What would you do if you woke up with nothing but a name and a feeling? Would you trust the first person who offered you a lifeline? Let's find out what Grace does next. Now let's turn the page in Grace's story, because everything's about to shift. It's late afternoon in that Chicago hospital room, the rain still tapping against the glass like it's trying to tell her something. Grace is sitting there, her fingers brushing that silver hope bracelet, when the door swings open. In walks a man who looks like he owns the world, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back and eyes so blue they could cut through steel. He's dressed in a black suit, sharp and pristine, like he just stepped out of a boardroom. This is Ryan Everett, 34 years old, CEO of Everett Holdings, a name that echoes through Chicago's skyline. Ryan doesn't hesitate. He strides right up to her bedside and says, "Grace Miller, you're coming with me. You're my fiancée." His voice is low, steady, like he's stating a fact no one can argue with. Grace blinks, her heart stumbling over itself. Fiancé. The word hangs in the air, heavy and impossible. She stares at him, searching his face for something familiar. But there's nothing, just those cold blue eyes and a jaw set like stone. "I don't know you," she says, her voice shaky but firm. Ryan doesn't flinch. "You don't remember me," he corrects. "You were in an accident. I've been looking for you." The doctor steps in, confused but nodding. "Mr. Everett identified you through hospital records. No one else has claimed you." Grace's mind races. She wants to argue, to demand proof, but what proof does she have to fight back with? Her memory's a void, and this man, this stranger, is the only one offering her a thread to hold on to. Ryan hands her a velvet box, flipping it open to reveal a diamond ring that catches the dim light. "We were engaged 3 months ago," he says. "You'll remember in time." Grace takes the ring, her fingers trembling. It's beautiful, but it feels wrong, like it belongs to someone else. Here's where the stakes rise. Ryan doesn't give her a choice. He's already arranged everything. Discharge papers signed, a car waiting outside. "You're coming home with me," he says, "and it's not a question." Grace could say no, could demand to stay, but where would she go? The hospital can't keep her forever, and the streets of Chicago feel too big, too empty without a past to guide her. So she nods, clutching that ring, her hazel eyes locked on Ryan's. "Fine," she says, "but I'm not your puppet." A flicker crosses his face. Surprise maybe, but he just turns and leads the way. Let's talk about Ryan for a moment. He's not just any billionaire. Everett Holdings owns half the high-rises in this city, an empire built on real estate and ruthless decisions. People call him the Ice King, a man who doesn't bend, doesn't feel. He's got a reputation for cutting deals that leave others in the dust, and he's never been seen with a woman long enough to call it love. But there's something beneath that frost. 10 years ago, he lost his little sister Lily in a fire by Lake Michigan. He was there, too late to save her, and the guilt's been eating him alive ever since. When he saw Grace's face on a news report about the accident, something snapped. She looked like Lily, the same soft features, the same quiet strength. He couldn't let her disappear too. Grace doesn't know any of this yet. All she knows is the man in front of her feels like a wall she can't climb. As they step into his sleek black car, the city blurring past, she steals a glance at him. "Why me?" she asks. Ryan keeps his eyes on the road. "Because you're mine," he says, simple as that. But there's a crack in his voice, a tremor he can't hide. Grace doesn't push, not yet. She's too busy fighting the strange pull in her chest, the one telling her this man might be more than he seems. This isn't a fairy tale proposal. It's a claim, a tether Grace didn't ask for. She's trapped, not by chains, but by her own blank slate. And Ryan, he's not forcing her for love, not yet. He's forcing her for something he can't even name, a ghost he's chasing in her eyes. What's coming next is a collision neither of them can predict, because Grace isn't just a lost soul. She's a spark, and Ryan's about to find out how brightly she can burn. Let's follow Grace as she steps into Ryan's world for the first time. The car pulls up to a towering penthouse in downtown Chicago, all glass and steel, reflecting the city lights like a mirror. Grace clutches that diamond ring in her pocket as Ryan leads her inside, his silence filling the space between them. The elevator hums up to the top floor, and when the doors slide open, she's hit with a view that steals her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the Chicago River, its waters shimmering under a twilight sky. The place is sleek, modern, everything in its place, black leather and marble, a home that feels more like a showroom than a sanctuary. Ryan turns to her, his blue eyes sharp. "This is your home now," he says, voice flat. "Bedrooms down the hall, kitchen stocked. Don't touch my office." Grace raises an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Nice to meet you too," she says, her tone dry. "I guess manners weren't part of the engagement package." Ryan's jaw tightens, but he doesn't respond. He pulls out a folder instead, sliding it across the glass table. "Our contract," he says. "Read it. Sign it." Grace picks it up, flipping through pages of rules. "Stay here, no outside contact, trust me to handle your recovery. In exchange, you get everything you need." She laughs, a short, sharp sound. "So I'm your prisoner, with perks. Great deal." He steps closer, his presence looming. "This isn't a game, Grace. You've got no one else. I'm your lifeline." She meets his gaze, unflinching. "Maybe," she says, "but I'm not signing my soul away to a stranger who thinks he owns me." She tosses the folder back, papers scattering. Ryan's eyes narrow, but there's a flicker in them, something like respect, or maybe irritation. He picks up a pen, scribbling her name himself. "It's done," he says. "You're mine for now." Grace smirks. "We'll see about that." That first night, the penthouse feels like a cage with a view. Grace wanders to the living room, barefoot on the cold floor, that hope bracelet glinting under the lights. Ryan's in his office, door shut, but she can feel him watching through the walls. She flops onto the couch, staring at the river, and mutters, "Fiancée, my foot. If I'm stuck here, I'm not making it easy for you, Ice King." She's got no plan yet, just a stubborn spark that refuses to dim. And Ryan? He's in that office, staring at a photo of Lily, his sister, her smile frozen in time. Grace's defiance echoes in his head, so different from Lily's quiet sweetness, and it unsettles him. He tells himself this is about control, about fixing a past he can't change, but her voice lingers. Next morning, Grace decides to test him. She's up early, rummaging through the kitchen, clattering pans loud enough to wake the city. Ryan storms out, hair tousled, still in a gray t-shirt and sweatpants, looking less like a CEO and more like a man caught off guard. "What are you doing?" he snaps. Grace turns, holding a spatula, a grin tugging at her lips. "Making breakfast, oh betrothed one. Pancakes sound good?" He stares, thrown by her casual defiance. "This isn't in the contract," he says. She shrugs. "Neither is me being quiet. Deal with it." For a second his mouth twitches, almost a smile, but he catches himself, turning away. "Eat fast," he says. "We've got a doctor's appointment." The appointment's a blur, tests and scans. The doctor's saying her memory loss might fade or might not. Ryan stands by, arms crossed, taking it all in. Grace catches him glancing at her, not with coldness now, but something softer, curious. Back at the penthouse, she pushes again. "So, Mr. Everett," she says, leaning against the counter, "what's my favorite color? My birthday? If I'm your fiancé, you'd know." He freezes, then recovers. "Blue," he guesses. "July 10th. She laughs. "Wrong and wrong. You're terrible at this." His eyes lock on hers, intense. "Then tell me," he says, voice low, "who are you, Grace?" She doesn't answer, not because she won't, but because she can't. The question hangs there, heavy, and for the first time she sees a crack in his armor. He's not just demanding answers, he's searching for them too. Grace steps closer, bold now. "Maybe I'll figure it out before you do," she says. "And when I do, you're not keeping me in this glass tower forever." Ryan doesn't move, but his gaze softens, just for a heartbeat. "You're not what I expected," he says, almost to himself. She grins. "Good." This is their dance, defiance meeting control, a spark brushing against ice. Grace isn't bowing to his rules, and Ryan isn't ready for how she challenges him. Something's brewing here, something neither of them can name yet. But one thing's clear, this stranger's vow is about to get a lot more complicated. Grace isn't one to sit still, not even in a penthouse that feels like a fortress. A few days into this strange arrangement, she decides Ryan's rules need a little shaking up. It starts small. She's restless that first evening, the city lights mocking her confinement. So she pads into the living room, finds the remote, and cranks the TV to some old rom-com, volume loud enough to echo off the marble walls. Ryan bursts out of his office, tie loose, eyes flashing. "What is this?" he demands. Grace lounges on the couch, feet up, grinning. "Just testing your sound system," she says. "It's top-notch. Want to watch?" He glares, but she pats the cushion next to her. "Come on, live a little." He mutters something about work and stalks off, but Grace catches him, pause, just for a second, like he's tempted. Next night, she ups the game. Ryan's in the shower, steam drifting from the bathroom, when Grace sneaks into his bedroom. It's all dark wood and crisp lines, sterile like the rest of the place. She spots his bed, king-sized and perfectly made, and flops right onto it, sprawling out like she owns it. When Ryan steps out, towel around his waist, hair dripping, he freezes. "Grace," he says, voice tight, "what are you doing?" She props herself on an elbow, innocent as can be. "Your bed looked lonely," she says. "No rule against me being here, right?" His jaw clenches, water trailing down his chest, and for a moment, he's too stunned to move. "Get out," he finally says, but it's weak, like he's fighting himself. Grace slides off with a smirk. "Sweet dreams," she calls, leaving him staring after her. Ryan's not used to this. He's built his life on order, every deal calculated, every emotion locked away. Grace is chaos, a wildfire he can't contain. He tells himself it's about keeping her safe, about figuring out who she is, but her laugh, her defiance, it's getting under his skin. The next day, she's at it again. He comes home from a meeting to find her in the kitchen, wearing one of his white dress shirts, sleeves rolled up, barefoot and humming. She's stirring something in a pot, the air thick with garlic and herbs. "What now?" he says, dropping his briefcase. Grace turns, spoon in hand. "Cooking dinner," she says. "Your fridge was begging for mercy." He stares, caught off guard by how she looks in his shirt, too big but somehow perfect. "You don't touch my things," he says, but his voice falters. She grins. "Too late. Try the pasta, it's good." He doesn't eat, not then, but he lingers, watching her twirl spaghetti onto a plate like it's the most natural thing. She's turning his world upside down, and he hates how much he doesn't hate it. That night, Grace pushes further. She drags a chair to the window, climbs up, and starts tracing shapes on the glass with her finger. Ryan catches her mid-doodle, a heart smudged in the condensation. "Explain," he says, arms crossed. She hops down, unfazed. "Just decorating," she says. "Your place needs some soul." He steps closer, towering over her. "This isn't your playground," he says. She tilts her head, eyes bright. "Then what am I to you, Ryan? A project? A ghost?" He doesn't answer, but his silence says more than he wants it to. Grace isn't just playing for fun. She's probing, testing the man who claims her, searching for cracks in his icy wall. And Ryan's feeling it. Every time she defies him, every time she fills his space with her presence, he's losing ground. He catches himself listening for her footsteps, wondering what she'll do next. One evening, she finds a record player tucked in a corner. Dust coating its edges, she puts on some jazz. The notes soft and warm and sways in the living room like no one's watching. Ryan steps out, drawn by the music, and stops short. Grace spins, catching his eye. "Dance with me," she says, holding out a hand. He shakes his head. "I don't dance." She steps closer, teasing. "Too bad. You're missing out." He turns away, but the rhythm lingers in his chest. The real shift comes late one night. Grace can't sleep, her mind buzzing with that ache she can't place. She wanders to the kitchen, pours a glass of water, and Ryan finds her there, barefoot in the dark. "Couldn't sleep," she says, voice softer now. He nods, leaning against the counter. "Me neither." For once, he doesn't snap, doesn't retreat. She looks at him, really looks, and asks, "Why are you doing this, Ryan? Keeping me here?" He hesitates, then says, "Because I couldn't lose you again." It slips out, raw and unguarded, and Grace's breath catches. "Again," she whispers. He doesn't explain, just walks away, but the words hang there, a thread pulling them closer. Grace keeps pushing, not because she wants to break him, but because she's starting to feel something too. His coldness isn't all there is. She sees it in the way he lingers when she talks, the way his hand hovers when she stumbles. One morning, she leaves a note on his office door. "Thanks for the shirt, it's comfy." When he finds it, he crumples it, but doesn't throw it away. He's unraveling, and she's the reason. Grace doesn't know his past, doesn't know about Lily, but she's waking something in him he thought was dead. And Ryan? He's starting to wonder if this game of hers isn't a game at all, but a lifeline he didn't know he needed. This is where they stand, teetering on the edge of something real. Grace's provocations aren't just rebellion. They're a call, a challenge, and Ryan's hearing it louder every day. What happens when a man who's locked his heart away meets a woman who refuses to be ignored? We're about to find out, because one night, one dream, is going to change everything between them. Grace has been stirring up Ryan's world for days now, but tonight, something shifts. It's late, the penthouse quiet except for the hum of the city beyond the windows. Grace is in her room, curled on the bed, when a sharp pain twists through her stomach. She gasps, clutching her side, her breath shallow. It's not new, this ache. The doctor mentioned stress from the accident could flare up, but she's ignored it, too busy testing Ryan's limits. Now it's hitting hard, and she can't hide it. She tries to stand to get water, but her legs buckle. A crash echoes as she knocks a lamp off the nightstand, shattering glass across the floor. Ryan's there in seconds, door flung open, his face tight with something Grace hasn't seen before. Concern. He's in a black t-shirt and pajama pants, hair messy, like he was already restless. "Grace," he says, voice dropping low as he takes in the scene. She's hunched over, pale, one hand pressed to her stomach. "It's nothing," she mumbles, forcing a weak smile. "Just a cramp." But her shudder betrays her, and Ryan's not buying it. He crosses the room in 2 strides, kneeling beside her. "You're not fine," he says, sharper now. "Stop moving." Grace doesn't argue, not this time. She's too dizzy, the room spinning, and Ryan's steady hands catch her before she sways again. One arm slides under her shoulders, the other behind her knees, and he lifts her like she weighs nothing. She's small against him, her head resting on his chest, and for a moment he freezes, struck by how fragile she feels. He shakes it off, carrying her back to the bed, setting her down with a gentleness that surprises them both. "Stay there," he says, already pulling out his phone. Grace watches, half dazed, as he calls his private doctor. "Now," he says into the line. "She's in pain. Hurry." While they wait, Ryan doesn't leave her side. He grabs a blanket from the chair, draping it over her, his fingers brushing her arm as he tucks it in. Grace catches his eye, her voice faint but teasing. "You're fussing," she says. "Didn't know you had it in you." He scowls, but it's softer than usual. "Shut up and rest," he mutters, sitting on the edge of the bed. She smiles, a real one this time. and it does something to him. He looks away, jaw tight, but his hand stays near hers, close enough to feel her warmth. The doctor arrives fast, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor. He checks Grace, pressing her stomach, asking about the pain. Stress-induced gastritis, he says, scribbling a prescription. Too much strain, not enough rest. She needs medicine, light meals, and calm. No more chaos for a while. Ryan nods, taking the script, his eyes never leaving Grace. She's watching him too, her hazel gaze heavy-lidded but curious. "You're staring," she whispers as the doctor packs up. Ryan doesn't deny it. "Go to sleep," he says instead, voice quieter now, almost tender. Once the doctor's gone, Ryan stays. Grace expects him to leave, to retreat to his office or his room, but he pulls the chair closer and sits, arms crossed like a guard. She shifts, wincing, and he's up again, adjusting her pillow without a word. "Are you worried about me?" she asks, half joking, half serious. He doesn't answer right away, just holds her gaze, those blue eyes stormy with something new. Finally, he says, "You're not dying on me, Grace. It's not a confession, not yet. But it's close." And her heart skips at the roughness in his tone. Grace drifts off, the medicine kicking in, but not before she murmurs, "Maybe you're not so cold after all." Ryan hears it, and it lands like a stone in his chest. He waits until her breathing evens out, then leans forward, elbows on his knees, watching her sleep. She's peaceful now, her face soft, and he can't look away. He's spent years building walls, keeping everyone out, but this woman, this stranger he claimed, is slipping through. He doesn't know why he cares, why her pain twists something in him, but it does, and it scares him. This night changes things. Ryan's always been the Ice King, untouchable, unreachable. But Grace, with her stubborn spark and quiet strength, is melting him, piece by piece. He doesn't admit it, not even to himself, but when he finally stands to leave, he brushes a strand of hair from her forehead, his touch lingering. "Good night," he says, too low for her to hear, and walks out. The door clicks shut, but the warmth stays, a crack in his armor he can't close. Grace might not remember who she is, but she's starting to see who Ryan could be. And Ryan, he's realizing that keeping her close isn't just about control anymore. It's about something deeper, something he's not ready to name. One crack's all it takes, and this one's going to spread. Things have been shifting between Grace and Ryan, a fragile thread weaving them closer. But life has a way of tearing even the strongest threads apart. It's a gray morning, about a week after Grace's stomach scare, when everything crumbles. She's in the penthouse kitchen, sipping tea, feeling steadier than she has in days. Ryan's at the table, reading reports, stealing glances at her over his coffee. There's a quiet ease between them now, unspoken but real. Then her phone buzzes, a cheap burner Ryan gave her for emergencies. She answers, voice light. "Hello?" But the voice on the other end isn't familiar. It's clipped, clinical. "Ms. Miller, this is Chicago General. We regret to inform you your father, Thomas Miller, passed away last night. Heart attack. He was brought in too late." Grace goes still, the phone slipping from her hand to the counter with a soft clack. Ryan looks up, frowning. "Grace," he says, standing as her face drains of color. "My dad," she whispers, eyes wide. "He's dead." The words don't fit, don't make sense. She doesn't remember him, not really, just vague shadows of a man who was never there. But he was her father, her only tie to a past she's lost, and now he's gone. Ryan's beside her in an instant, hand on her arm. "What happened?" he asks, steady but urgent. She shakes her head, tears brimming. "I don't know him," she says, "but I should, and now I never will." The funeral's 3 days later, a small affair on a rainy hillside outside Chicago. Grace stands by the grave, black dress clinging to her in the drizzle, staring at the coffin as it's lowered. "Thomas Miller," the headstone reads, a name that feels like a stranger's. Ryan's there too, a few steps back, umbrella in hand, his presence solid but silent. She doesn't cry, not yet. She just watches, numb, the rain soaking her hair. Across the cemetery, a man in a dark coat lingers, watching her. Grace doesn't notice, but Ryan does, his eyes narrowing. Something's off, but he keeps it to himself for now. Back at the penthouse, Grace shuts down. She doesn't talk, doesn't tease, just sits on the couch, knees pulled up, staring at nothing. Ryan hovers nearby, unsure what to do. He's never been good at this, at comfort, but seeing her like this, hollowed out, twists something in him. He tries. "Grace," he says, sitting beside her, "you don't have to go through this alone." She doesn't look at him. "I've always been alone," she says, voice flat. "Even when I had him, I was alone." Ryan doesn't push, just stays, letting the silence speak. Then the betrayal lands. 2 days after the funeral, Grace is sorting through a box of her father's things the hospital sent over. Old photos, a watch, a letter. She's fragile but holding it together when the doorbell rings. Ryan answers, and there's that man from the cemetery, sharp-featured, mid-30s, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Daniel Pierce," he says, offering a hand Ryan doesn't take. "I'm Grace's brother, her real family." Grace steps forward, confused. "Brother," she says. "I don't remember you." Daniel's smile widens. "You wouldn't. I've been looking for you, Grace. You're a Pierce, not a Miller. Dad wasn't your dad. You're the last heir to our family's fortune." Grace reels, gripping the couch. Ryan steps between them, voice cold. "Prove it." Daniel pulls out papers, birth records, a DNA test. Grace scans them, hands shaking. It's true. Her mother had her out of wedlock, hid her with Thomas Miller to escape the Pierce legacy. But there's more. Daniel drops a bomb. "Ryan knew," he says, nodding at him. "He's been working with me to keep you here, under control, until I could claim you." Grace turns to Ryan, eyes blazing. "Is it true?" she asks, voice breaking. Ryan's silent, too long, and that's enough. "You lied," she says, stepping back. "Again?" Ryan tries to explain. "It's not what you think," he says, reaching for her. "I didn't know who you were at first. I found out after the accident through my contacts. I was trying to protect you." Grace laughs, bitter and raw. "Protect me? Or use me? Like everyone else?" Daniel smirks, but Grace doesn't care. She grabs her coat, the bracelet glinting on her wrist. "I'm done," she says, voice trembling with rage and hurt. "With both of you." She storms out, leaving Ryan staring at the empty doorway, his world cracking open. This is Grace's breaking point. Her father's gone, her identity's a lie, and the man she was starting to trust might have betrayed her. Ryan's not innocent here. He dug into her past, found the Pierce connection, but kept it quiet, thinking he could shield her from it. Now it's blown up, and Grace is lost again, walking Chicago streets alone. Ryan's left with the weight of his choices, realizing too late that keeping her close wasn't control, it was need, and he might have just lost her for good. Grace is gone, and the penthouse feels empty without her. She's out there, wandering Chicago's rainy streets, her coat soaked, her heart a tangle of grief and anger. Ryan's betrayal stings worse than Daniel's lies, because she'd started to trust him, to feel something real. She ends up by the river, staring at the water, clutching that hope bracelet like it's all she has left. She doesn't know where to go, doesn't know who she is anymore, but she knows she can't run forever. Meanwhile, Ryan's a mess. He paces the penthouse, replaying her words, her hurt. He's lost her, and it's his fault, but he's not letting her go without a fight. That night, Grace checks into a cheap motel, the kind with flickering lights and thin walls. She's exhausted, sitting on the bed, when there's a knock. She opens the door, and it's Ryan, rain dripping from his hair, blue eyes fierce. "What do you want?" she snaps, arms crossed. He doesn't waste time to fix this, he says. "I'm here to help you take back what's yours." Grace laughs, cold and sharp. "You've done enough." He steps closer, voice steady. "I was wrong, Grace. I kept things from you, thinking I could protect you. But I'm not with Daniel. I never was. I'm with you." She searches his face, wanting to believe him, but the pain's too fresh. Ryan doesn't back down. He pulls out a file, tossing it on the bed. "Proof," he says. "I've been digging since you left. Daniel's lying about more than you think." Grace hesitates, then picks it up. It's a stack of documents, emails, bank records. Daniel's been siphoning the Pierce fortune for years, forging papers to cut her out. Ryan tracked it all down, using his contacts, his resources. "I can stop him," he says, "but I need you with me." Grace looks at him, her guard still up. "Why should I trust you now?" she asks. He meets her eyes, raw and open. "Because I can't lose you again, not like this." That's the moment Grace wavers. She sees it, the truth in his gaze, the way he's fighting for her, not against her. She nods, slow and reluctant. "Okay," she says, "but we do this my way." Ryan agrees, a faint relief in his stance. They're a team now, fragile but determined. Over the next few days they work nonstop. Grace digs through her father's old letters, finding clues about her mother's past with the Pierce family. Ryan calls in favors, hiring lawyers to verify Daniel's fraud. They meet in coffee shops, poring over files, their hands brushing over papers, the air between them charged with something unspoken. The plan takes shape. Daniel's hosting a gala at the Pierce estate, a sprawling mansion by Lake Michigan, to cement his claim as heir. Grace and Ryan decide it's their shot. The night arrives and Grace walks in, stunning in a simple black dress, Ryan at her side in a tailored suit. Daniel's there, smug, greeting guests, until he sees them. Grace steps forward, voice clear. "I'm Grace Pierce," she says, holding up the real birth certificate Ryan uncovered. "And you're a fraud." The room buzzes as Ryan lays out the evidence. Bank transfers, forged signatures, all projected on a screen for the guests to see. Daniel stammers, but it's over. Security escorts him out, his schemes in ruins. They've won, but the real victory comes later. Alone on the estate's balcony, the lake stretching out under the stars, Grace turns to Ryan. "You didn't have to do this," she says, voice soft. He steps closer, his hand finding hers. "I did," he says, "because you're not just a name to me, Grace. You're everything I didn't know I needed." Her breath catches, and she looks up at him, seeing the man beneath the ice, the one who's been breaking for her all along. "I was so angry," she admits, "but I missed you." He cups her face, gentle and sure. "I missed you too," he says, "more than I can say." And then he kisses her, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that washes away the lies and the pain. Grace melts into it, her hands on his chest, feeling his heartbeat under her fingers. It's not just redemption, it's a promise, a unity forged through every fight, every doubt. When they pull back, foreheads touching, Grace whispers, "No more secrets, right?" Ryan smiles, small but real. "No more secrets," he says, "just us." They stay there, wrapped in each other, the lake a quiet witness to their turning point. Grace has taken back her name, her past, but more than that, she's claimed her future. Ryan's not the Ice King anymore, not with her. He's the man who'd tear down his own walls to keep her safe, to keep her close. Back at the penthouse that night, Grace curls up on the couch, Ryan beside her, his arm around her shoulder. It's simple, it's real, and it's theirs. Daniel's gone, the betrayal's behind them, and what's left is a bond neither saw coming. This is their redemption, their unity. Grace walked away once, but she came back, and Ryan proved he's hers, not through words, but through every choice he made. They're not just surviving now. They're building something new, something stronger, and it's only the beginning. Grace and Ryan have fought through shadows to find each other, and now they're stepping into the light. It's 3 months after that night on the balcony, 3 months of healing, of building something real. The air's warm today, a soft June breeze rustling through a garden just outside Chicago. White roses line a stone path, their petals catching the golden sunlight, and at the end stands an arch draped in ivy. This is where Grace and Ryan will say their vows, not as strangers, bound by lies, but as two people who chose each other. Grace walks down the aisle, radiant in a simple white gown that flows like water. No veil, just her chestnut hair loose, a few wildflowers tucked in. Her hazel eyes shine, locked on Ryan, and she's never looked more herself. Ryan waits under the arch, no longer the cold CEO in his sharp suits. He's in a gray jacket, sleeves rolled up, his blue eyes soft and steady. He's nervous, you can tell, the way his hand flexes at his side, but when he sees Grace, a smile breaks across his face, unguarded and true. She reaches him and he takes her hands, his grip firm but gentle, like he's afraid she'll vanish. The officiant speaks, voice warm. We're gathered to witness the union of Grace Miller-Pierce and Ryan Everett. Friends murmur, a small crowd of people they've let in, lawyers who help them, a few from Grace's rediscovered writing circle. Ryan's turn comes first. Do you, Ryan, take Grace to be your wife, to love and cherish all your days? He doesn't hesitate. I do, he says, voice clear, unwavering. Grace feels her heart lift, and when it's her turn, she squeezes his hands. I do, she says, a grin tugging at her lips, forever this time. The crowd chuckles, but Ryan's eyes glisten, just a little. Before the officiant can finish, Grace leans in, voice low. This means you're stuck with me now, she whispers. No take-backs. Ryan's laugh is soft, rare, and he whispers back. Good. I'd chase you all over again if I had to. Then she does it, plants a quick, playful kiss on his cheek right there in front of everyone. The guests laugh, clapping, and Ryan shakes his head, a mock glare in his eyes. You're impossible, he mutters, but he's beaming. The officiant clears his throat, smiling. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Ryan doesn't wait. He pulls Grace close, kissing her deep and slow, her arms looping around his neck as the world fades away. They dance later, under string lights strung through the trees, the music a soft jazz tune Grace picked. She sways in his arms, barefoot now, her head on his chest. You're not bad at this, she teases, looking up. Ryan smirks. I had a good teacher. She laughs, and it's the sound he loves most, free and bright. Around them the garden glows, a little piece of peace they've carved out. Grace's past is still a patchwork, memories trickling back slow, but she doesn't need it all. She's got Ryan this moment, and that's enough. This wedding isn't just a ceremony. It's a vow renewed, not forced by circumstance, but chosen through every storm they've faced. Grace thinks about that hospital room, the lies, the lake where Ryan bared his soul. She's lost so much, her dad, her old life, but she's found more. Ryan thinks about Lily, the guilt he carried, and how Grace thawed him, gave him a reason to feel again. They're not perfect, but they're whole together. A love built on trust, not contracts. As the night winds down, they slip away to the garden's edge, sitting on a bench, her hand in his. Grace traces that hope bracelet, now a symbol of them both. We made it, she says, voice soft. Ryan nods, pulling her close. We did, he says, and I'm never letting you go. She smiles, resting against him, the stars above them endless. It's a new beginning, not a fairy tale, but real, messy, beautiful. Grace Miller-Pierce and Ryan Everett, two lost souls who found home in each other. This is their love, hard-won and true. No more running, no more hiding, just them, forever, in a garden where every rose whispers their story. And there you have it, my lovely friends, Grace and Ryan's story, from a hospital room shrouded in mystery to a garden glowing with love. What a journey it's been. They started as strangers, tied together by a lie, a vow neither of them meant to keep. But somewhere along the way, through lost memories and broken trust, they found something real. A love that didn't just survive the chaos, it thrived in it. Grace, with her quiet fire, and Ryan with his thawing heart, showed us that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. I don't know about you, but this one hit me right here, that moment by the lake when Ryan confessed everything, or that kiss under the stars after they took down Daniel. It's the kind of love that fights, that heals. What was your favorite part? Did you feel Grace's hurt when she walked away, or Ryan's hope when he chased her down? Drop it in the comments because I read every single one, and I love hearing what moves you. Maybe you've had a moment like theirs, where someone unexpected became your everything. Tell me about it. Let's share that magic. Before we go, think about this. Grace lost her past, but she didn't let it define her. Ryan carried his guilt like a shadow, but he learned to step into the light. Love isn't always easy, right? It's messy, it's hard, but when it's real, it's worth every second. So here's my question for you. Could you forgive like Grace did, or fight like Ryan? I'd love to know where you're watching from, too. Chicago, with its rivers and rain, or somewhere far away cozied up with this story? Wherever you are, you're part of this little family now. If you loved Grace and Ryan's tale, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a good love story, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Tap that bell too, so you never miss a journey like this. We've got more coming your way, more hearts to mend, more vows to make. A huge thank you for being here, for sticking with me through every twist. You're the reason I tell these stories. So until next time, keep believing in love, in second chances, in the strangers who might just change your life. This is Emma signing off with a big hug from my heart to yours. See you soon.